G'day, hi and welcome. I've got a pouting dog right now because Dad's next door and she's not allowed out. She's going to chase the cats, that's why. So you're offended, aren't you? Alright, before we get into this, got to scratch a big fat dog, but pay the dog tax. Always pay your dog tax. Okay, look out, Lacey. I'm in mad scientist mode right now because I'm working on stuff. And it always... Always interrupting my videos. There, you happy? Lovely. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Watch out. Alright, I'm all full of dog here now. Okay, look out. Watch out. Get your big fat butt out of the way. Let me put my feet up. Alright, so I'm in mad scientist mode right now because I'm working on my bike. And this is going to be a video that's going to be more geared towards talking, obviously. And it's going to be long, drawn out like I normally do. And it's not rehearsed, so it's not going to be very polished off like most of my videos. But I do like the discussions. And this is going to be geared more towards people getting into motorcycles and stuff like that. And when you get into motorcycles, depending on what kind of bike it is, well, it doesn't really matter what kind of bike it is. At some point, it's going to need maintenance. It's going to need stuff done to it. Now, a lot of people, if they have a lot of money, they don't think about it. It's like, oh, I think it needs this, and I think it needs it, so I'll just buy it and go and do it. Everything always comes in life always comes down to time versus money, right? So, but sometimes money isn't the answer; it's to the problem. Meaning, you know, I got a flat tire, buy spark plugs. Engine's running funny, buy spark plugs. Tail light don't work, buy spark plugs. Like, it always seems like everybody's de facto thing to fix their bike is just buy new spark plugs. So today I was testing my spark plugs, that's why I brought it up. But there's other things that I got to test, so sensors and stuff. So what tools do you need? And you don't need as much as you think you do to work on bikes or whatever. The more modern, the more sophisticated it gets, the more you need. But nowadays, a lot of bikes you can just work on with your laptop. It'll give you every code of everything that's pretty much wrong with it. Well, at least it tells you where to look for the sensor-wise. So bikes are getting almost as complicated as cars in some ways, but yet they're just scaled-down versions of complications. So you still have the same ingredients for fuel injection on a car as you do on a motorcycle. Carburetors, stuff like that, more analog stuff's a little different. And you will require a certain amount of tools to make everything run tippity-top. So if you got a piece of paper and a pen, I'm just going to bring up some tools that you might need and just kind of ways of going about working on stuff. So far, I'm what you'd call the slow, methodical type. Always. Right. That's the washing machine. Oh my God, that thing got loud. I think it's out of balance. Sorry for that racket, but anyway, it normally doesn't do that, so it must be out of balance. The thing is that there's certain tools. One tool that is invaluable is a multimeter. Get yourself a multimeter. With a multimeter, you can test your plugs. You can get spark plug testers. I'm going to probably buy one later on, but I'm tight with my money right now because of, I don't have a lot of money to throw at things. So this is also why learning how to work on things is also a good idea. It saves you money. It's just it's going to cost you time. So I'm looking at my motorcycle being down for the next maybe 2 or 3 days, with a total of maybe 4 days down during the riding season, which I could live with that if it fixes the problem. But I'm trying to diagnose a problem on my bike, which is always process of elimination. This is what costs people don't understand about mechanics. Especially when they don't talk to the mechanic or whatever. I'm not a licensed mechanic, but it's just years ago when I used to work I was sort of an apprentice, sort of not. I never got all the paperwork done to get my apprenticeship. And there wasn't a lot, back in the day, there was a lot of apprenticeships in Ontario, but it was first come, first serve. Now they don't do hardly anything like that at all, but what you did was you worked around licensed mechanics for 6 months to a year or something like that, and then you could work up your time and then go to school, or you could go to school and then work off your time. And I was lucky enough to actually get hired I don't even know how I got that job. I don't even remember how I got the job there, but it was just one of those jobs that I think it was through a government program, and there was the lady that was in charge. She asked me, well, what would you like to be doing? And at the time I said, I'd love to be a motorcycle mechanic. She goes, well, we might have a shop for you. And remember, there was a student program, and that's how I think I got into the shop. And when I got in there, what the guy would do is there was two guys that were there. One was he's been a mechanic forever, and then the other guy, well, he started off as a student as well. And this was a great way for the mechanic, the motorcycle shop to get slightly cheaper labor through the apprenticeship program, but also a great way to find a mechanic at a low cost. So if it was worth it for the apprenticeship program. And I was definitely on the top of the list. It was like, he says, no, he says, you can work your hours here. He says, it'll count towards, but you had so much time to do it. But you did pick up things. And one of the things is you'll grab a machine, you'll work on it, and by the time you figure out what the problem is, okay, you probably already, the machine is usually handed to you like this. It's just not running. Okay, well, is it doing anything? No, it rolls over, but that's about it. That's all I got out of it. I don't know, fix the problem. So you don't have much to go on. So it's just kind of like somebody walks into a doctor's office saying, I'm sick. Okay, well, what's your symptoms? So you try to get it out of them. Sometimes people are good, and sometimes you can't get much out of well, I just don't know what to do. I just, they're fed up with it. They just want you to fix it and whatever. So then you have to diagnose the problem, and you can only do it through process of elimination. So if you can get it started or ride it around, you can say, okay, well, it's doing this, so that's most likely going to narrow it down to this, or this. But some problems are one of those things where it's a central hub of a problem, meaning that you might have 15, 20 different causes to that problem. And eliminating each one of these problem possibilities takes time. And basically, it can get you to the point where you're testing the entire thing, right? Sometimes you get a better hunch the more experience you get. But with that said, what ends up happening too is that when you show the bill to the person saying, yes, I did, it took us this long to diagnose the problem, but it only took us like 15 minutes to fix it. And they look at the bill and they're like, oh my God, why is it so expensive? It's because, we didn't have a lot of information to go on. So let's say you're one of those guys that you're semi-handy, you're like myself, you can work on things, but you don't have an entire shop to work on, and you don't have all the necessary tools for the machine you want to work on, which, you might not need as much as you think, but definitely a multimeter is a good place to start for the electrics. It's amazing what you can test with that. I'll be testing my coils with it. I'll be testing my, there are better tools out there. I'll be testing my fuel injectors. I'll be testing, obviously you can just diagnose the battery. Another one is a continuity or a test light. These little things, people buy them, they have no idea what to use them for, right? And there's Missy, my little cat. And they don't know what to use them for, but these lights, they become invaluable. They're only like 10, 15 bucks. But it's a tool that you use it twice, but it saves you like $500 when you use it. It's like, oh, okay, this is, you can test fuses with it. You can test all that kind of stuff too. You can do a lot with the voltmeter, stuff like that. So you want basically a multimeter, the best you can afford. You can get cheap ones. They'll usually do the job, how accurate they are, whatever. So write down voltmeter as a pretty priority thing to get for the electrics. Now, obviously, there's going to be the wrenching aspect of this gets in here too, but that we'll talk about that as we go. The second one I would get is definitely that little test light, and all it is, it looks like a pencil with a clear plastic little filament in there, and if you're testing the end of a wire under, let's say your headlight is out, okay, and you change the bulb and the headlight's still out, well, that tells you one of your wires is probably not. So you go into one side of the connector and you put it in there and the light doesn't come on, well, that tells you that you got a break in the circuit. So very, very, and it could save you you could diagnose the problem, so if you have to take it to a mechanic, then you at least can tell them where to start, which will save you time and money. The other thing you want to get, and again, there's no end to this list, but it's something that is really, regardless of what kind of motorcycle it is a compression gauge and a vacuum gauge. You want these two things. The vacuum gauge, you might not need a vacuum gauge on too many things, but sometimes they're nice to have because you could track things with a vacuum gauge and various different attachments or whatever. But definitely a compression gauge is going to really, really help you out. It kind of tells you especially if you have a two-stroke, you'll know how long it is you'll see your compression going down pretty fast on the two-strokes usually. But it's a good idea to get the health of the motorcycle. The other thing is, and probably the most valuable tool you could ever get for a motorcycle, is an impact driver. These things, you can get them in assorted sizes, buy as many as you can get, from the big one to the little one. I mean, you don't need the big honking one like to work on like cement trucks and stuff, but a good size one, and a good ball and peen hammer, and a good heavy ball and peen hammer, and a smaller light ball and peen hammer. And that's good for cracking nuts and bolts loose that might be oxidized or whatever. You get a bit of an anodization that happens sometimes between different metals, and it's like you got this hex bolt, you just can't get it out. But sometimes you put on the impact driver, give it 2 smacks, and out it comes. The other thing is always have a can of penetrating fluid of some sort, 3-in-1, whatever it is. WD-40, you're going to probably, the more you start learning about other stuff, the less you're going to use that stuff. It is good, but, Honeygoo, I really like that Honeygoo stuff. That stuff is really good. You definitely want to always have a can of brake clean around, and probably carb cleaner, which you could also use in your injectors and stuff like that. Carb and injector cleaner, that stuff. You want that stuff too. So those are some of the fluids you're going to want to just have around. And if you have a chain wax. If you have belt lube, stuff like that, you can get all that. The other one is alignment tools. They're usually not too expensive, but get yourself a chain alignment tool if you have a chain or a belt. Get yourself an alignment tool. The other thing is a spark plug gap tool, or various. You can probably get both of them, but depending on if your bike's metric and you look if you have a service manual, that's something else you should buy, is a service manual. It's nice to have it. Yeah, sometimes you get it online or whatever, but it's rather than sitting there trying to fidget with a computer screen. Sometimes it's just really nice to have the manual right in front of you. Get one of those, but get yourself a spark plug gap gauge or whatever. Spark plug gauge. There's a bunch of thing that you get. The other one is you can get a thread gauge tool. It's just a little. You might want to write that down. Thread gauge tool, and you can research these things after. But also get yourself a feeler gauge, different feeler gauges, especially if you want to get into doing, checking your timing and your valve clearances and stuff like that. But there's also other things that are, good to have. Grease gun, if you got nipples on, for greasing up the bearings and stuff like that, good to have. If you don't have a grease gun nipples on the bike anywhere, some bikes do, some bikes don't, then don't bother getting it. Another thing is obviously you want yourself a good ratchet set and torque wrenches. Torque wrenches, you can get them from 10 pounds. Get yourself like a medium one, up to like 150 pounds or 150 newton meters, whichever you're gonna work in. And then get the really, really small one, because the big ones are no good. Like I got the cheap El Cheapo, just the brake bar, which just has it gets you in the ballpark. But most of the other, and if you can't afford those, there's other ways around it. It's just by knowing, roughly how many turns past the tight spot. It's good to get that. Get yourself a chain cleaner if you can get that, and obviously if you have a chain, there's a little tool you can get. It makes cleaning the chain really, really easy. Good maintenance tool to have. Paddock stands or motorcycle lift, depending on your motorcycle. If you can afford one, get one. If you can get the table, even better. But sometimes you still need the stand anyway. if you're going to be taking off the front wheel or the back wheel, whatever. Other things you can get that you should get over time, if you have liquid cool, obviously get yourself the fluid, your radiator fluid checker there. It's just like a little plunger thing. What's the proper name for that? Anyway, it's a tool for checking your antifreeze tester is what I've always called it, but I'm sure there's another name for it. That's a good thing to get. Mechanic's stethoscope, good idea to get if you can get one. They're pretty cheap. Vernier calipers and a micrometer. Not something you're going to use often, but it is a good way to monitor wear and tear on things. Very, very good thing. Battery load tester. This is a must-have because a lot of times you'll use your voltmeter and your battery's still showing 12 volts, but you put it under load and the battery's NFG. No good. No bleeping good, right? So these are good things to have. I have some of these things. A timing light. You don't always need a timing light, but it's nice to have. Depending on how you want to do things. I've seen a lot of people time engines without a timing light, so it's nice to have. You can line up your marks or whatever. But yeah, it's nice to have it if your bike requires it. The other one is funnels, just little freaking funnels, just for filling in things. It's just so nice to have that. Another one is a brake bleeding kit. If you have disc brakes, a brake bleeding kit they're like $3-4. Man, it saves you so much hassle sitting there. Your hand's going to get tired or squishing the brake or whatever. This there, you just vacuums it right through and takes all the air bubbles out. Cheap, might as well get it. Honing machines and stuff like that, honing stones and stuff like that. You don't really need that stuff unless you're rebuilding an engine, but I'm talking more on the maintenance angle of it. Another thing you can get is little wire brush sets and little pick sets, little dental pick sets. Those things come in handy for just cleaning up stuff and moving corrosion, and you'd be surprised what it does. Really good. Get yourself also you should always have some electrical connector boxes, O-ring connector boxes. You know, if you start pulling things apart on your bike, this is where your vernier calipers will come in handy. Let's say you're looking for an O-ring for a fuel injector, okay, and you just can't buy one. You know, it's like you got to buy the whole set. A lot of things like a 10-cent part. Oh well, we can't sell you that part. We can only sell you the $300 unit. You know, it's like it's not like it used to be years ago where you could get a part for the part for the part for the part. Now it's if you can get it, it's in a unit. But sometimes you can find these things at hardware stores and stuff like that, bearings or whatever. So you'll have to go through your motorcycle, and whenever you take something apart, just measure it up, take photos of it, measure things up so that if you do have to replace it, you know what you're looking for. And sometimes, even if you don't need to replace it, if you know what you're looking for, just kind of see if you can track down long before you'd ever have to replace it. Just where would I find this little O-ring if I had to find this such said O-ring, whatever. Other things you could get is if you've got a carburetor, basically you want to do the vacuum test, synchronize your carb. You can get a carb sync kit. Fuel injection, you're not really worried about that, but in replace of the carb sync kit, because you're going to be going with an OBD2 or 3 or 4 reader, whatever it is, whatever your bike requires. Newer bikes probably all USB now, I would imagine. Nice and simple that you could get that so you could diagnose your machine. That's a good idea. Other thing is electronic electrical connector cleaner. It's like a spray thing. Don't spray electronics with harsh chemicals like brake clean or something like that, because sometimes it might be a type of metal that might react to that stuff. So you think you're cleaning it, but instead you're corroding it. White lithium grease is good to have on hand for certain things. Medical connector greases, extra fittings for connectors. Take a note of the type of fittings you have on connectors you have, and maybe you can go to an automotive store and see if you can just track them down ahead of time. So if you ever had to replace it, it's just good to know. And then sometimes if they're cheap enough, maybe we'll just have 5 of them sitting around. Shrink tube. Always have shrink tube around. You never have enough shrink tube. But you can buy electrical connector kits so that you can make things as well. Fuses. Always have a spare thing of fuses if you can. Build them up. You know, have it, not need it, not have it. You don't usually go through too many fuses unless you've got a wiring problem somewhere else, right? What the fuse is telling you is you have a short in your system. You know, like I get it, if you're going over rough terrain, sometimes things will break, but usually if you have a fuse that keeps blowing, there's another problem there somewhere, and this is where all those other tools will come in handy, particularly the, you know, your testers, you know, your little, you know, light tester light or whatever, stuff like that. Alligator leads, these little clips, these things are, get like, you can buy them in the bagfuls, like bags of 20 or whatever. Buy like 3 bags of those. They just become so useful. Really good little tools to have, especially if you're hooking up little things just to test them. You can get fuel injector kit testers. You can get, if you need that, again, depends what you need. Other thing is, you know, specialty, if the bike needs specialty tools. You might not use it very often, but sometimes if it requires it, that or see if you can make the tool or whatever, it's nice to have it ahead of time in case you have it. The point is when you have a toolbox, you're probably, a motorcycle kit toolbox, maybe this big, could have every tool to work on every part of the bike, and you don't have to look through the big toolbox. Like that one has it. Torques. Some bikes have torques. My bike, the Triumph Daytona 2000 TT600 2000 to or 1999 to 2002, they use torques on the airbox and on the fuel bar rail, which is part of the fuel injection. The later ones went to a regular Phillips, like every other normal manufacturer out there. But torques, I mean, nice to have those. See what you need if you need them. Hey, don't buy it if you don't need it, but if you need it, see what your bike needs. That's why I like with the sockets and stuff like that. Once you go over every nut and bolt on your bike, you'll know what's missing out of your toolkit. Other thing is a good spark plug wrench. The one that comes in with the motorcycle toolkit will get the job done. I used mine today, and it actually worked quite well. But sometimes they're not all that precise, right? That's just more or less to get you out of a bind when you're on the side of the road. But the other thing too is this is where your little torquer, your torque bars are going to give you a lot of less hassle if you have to work on things. Hopefully not on the side of the road, but having things torqued at the right proper. There's very few things that are torqued on a motorcycle that you can't break free with a regular ratchet. With the exception of maybe a few things. The other thing is if you have to work on the clutch or something like that, something you're probably going to need is 3-jawed pullers. Pullers are going to be something that are going to be kind of unique to the bike you're using. Some you might need internal pullers, external pullers, but now we're getting into like clutch replacement and real internal stuff like that. But it's good to have it if you're inspecting your clutch. Like I won't do it now, but my clutch seems to be working fine. But I wouldn't mind to see how my clutch plates are doing. I mean, it's a 15-year-old bike with relatively low mileage on it, but little clutch plates, you give it another 20, 30,000 clicks on that bike, those clutch plates are going to start to show some wear. And I don't know what the previous owner was like with this bike, if he was doing wheelies every 15 seconds with it. Nope. I accidentally power wheelied the other day on that little bike. It will power wheelie. I was in second gear, and I was just like, I was diagnosing a problem. I was coming through the town. I normally don't go pretty hot through the town. I'm always doing the speed limit or whatever. But I was just like, okay, well, I thought it was in third, and I wanted to hear it at 10,000 RPM, and I didn't want to break the speed limit too much. So no one was behind me, and I did it, and I didn't realize I was in second. So all of a sudden I was like, what's going, oh, I'm power wheeling. So I go through the town on one tire. It's like, I didn't mean to do that. But I was able to hear my problem and the fueling it was doing. Other thing is, we live in the digital age, and a lot of machines now, because they all require digital, digital fuel mapping and stuff like that to the ECU, the electronic controller. What you might want to do is see if you can find the fueling program for that ahead of time. I've already found the one for mine, and I tune ECU. I haven't tried it on the Triumph yet. I'll do that when I have a second bike. But maybe my problems right now are not... I have a hunch it's going to be spark plug related. Just by the testing I did on the spark plugs today, it looks like they're still good, but they're probably starting to get a little bit weak, and they were definitely corroded. But the burn on my plugs was really good. Another thing you could get is just like little cleaning tools and little, specialty cleaning kits. Sometimes it's good to get into stuff like that. Fasteners, you can get yourself some spare fasteners. You can buy them by the bulk, and the reusable fasteners are just rubber and metal and rubber and whatever. They're better than twist ties. Aviation pliers. You don't usually, if you're going to go racing, you'll need these things to lock wire your bike, lock wire stuff on the bike. So aviation pliers are good to have. Otherwise, you probably really don't need them, but it doesn't hurt to get them. Spare drain bolts. Good idea to get spare drain bolts. Good idea to sometimes look at the healthier gaskets on certain things and see if you need something there. Wheel bearing puller. Good idea to have ahead of time. So, because a lot of these tools are going to translate to the next bike you buy, or maybe a few bikes, whatever. So if you don't have these things, it's nice to have them. Pullers, again, you're going to see what you need, what you don't need, whatever. A good set of Allen wrenches, T-handled wrenches, the Allen T-handles, they're really nice to work with. You're less likely to strip things out with those. Also, if you get yourself, like Allen sockets, it makes it a lot easier to work with. The other thing, what else could I say? Obviously, tire pressure gauge. Get yourself a good one. I know to carry on the bike, just get the cheapie, the El Cheapo, the $5 one or whatever, $2 one, whatever, just to have it so when you're out on the road. But get yourself a good tire pressure gauge. The other thing you can get too, again, if you're going to get into racing, you're going to get tire warmers and paddock stands, as well as you're going to get a temperature gun. Now, the temperature gun, I would get that anyway. And I'll tell you why. Because then you can monitor your exhaust, if it's running really hot. That could tell you some stuff about how your bike's doing. If you have hot spots, whatever. It's a good idea to do that. Tire patch kit, always a good idea. Tire plugs, always good to have. What else? Spare caps for your valve stems, valve stem remover. Some of these caps have a valve stem remover on them, but good to have those. What else can you get? Oh, geez. I mean, the world's your oyster here. So these are just some of the things that I find make life a lot easier. Obviously, a good socket set, but you buy a socket set, there might be only 4 sockets for the entire bike, or 6 sockets, or whatever. There's some bikes out there that were designed well enough that you could basically only need 7 to 11 tools to work on the entire motorcycle. Now, that was, I forget what BMW it was, but it was basically, they weren't mix matching, like 5 different types of bolts on one area. It was just like, no, everything's a 10 mil, everything's an 8 mil, everything's a 15 or whatever, or 14, and they just kept everything designed there. And it eliminates, okay, well, you gotta grab this, okay, for these 2 bolts, and then you gotta grab this other tool for, it's when people design stuff, it's nice when they make everything, pretty much all the same. It's like, just put them all the same. Yes, it's a little bit meatier than it needs to be in some areas, but it's all the same, and it's nice when that stuff happens. What else could I get talk about that you should get? Yeah, you should always have your oil and oil filter on hand and stuff like that. Now, mind you, I got to practice what I preach too. It takes time to work on all this stuff because you're going to spend a lot on tools, but you probably won't spend anywhere near as much as you think if you're buying smart. Meaning you're only buying what the bike needs, not 20 different types of tools that you're not going to use. So some of these tools are more, the diagnosing stuff is really going to help you out a lot. Like I say, the OBD2 reader is something I got to get to USB so I could diagnose my bike. Relays and sensors, again, if you can afford to have some on hand, it's one of those things, if you don't want any downtime on the bike, the more stuff you have sitting there ready to replace, the better it is. The consumables, you always want to have that sitting on the shelf, so you never have to worry about that. An oil pan drain, a really good one. Get yourself a good one. I got a cheap one, but I'd rather have the good one because the good one you can just put a cap on it once you're done, wipe out wipe the top side of it, and you carry it right to the shop. You can dump it into their holding tank. It might be a little fee, but it's cheaper than getting an oil change done by somebody else, right? So, yeah, these things are pretty good to have. Spare bulbs. Nice to have spare bulbs. What else? Manuals. Wait. You don't hear the dog meowing. It's raining out there anyway. All right, I'll let you out. Go this way. Back this way. Oh, gotta let both of them out. Sorry, animal interruption. 2 hooligans. All right, both of you, come on. That's it. You can get out now. It's raining out there. You'll be a wet dog. You'll be a wet cat. That's it. Fine. That dog ain't stupid. She knows exactly where my dad went. It's just when she goes over there, she chases the cats. The other cats. She doesn't chase our cats. She protects our cats, but she chases the other one. So anyway, hopefully this wasn't too boring of a conversation, but I think it's a good one. So like I say, I hope you had your pens and papers out so you could just give you an idea of where to start. To start collecting stuff. Tire pump. If you can afford it, obviously a compressor. Now, what about impact guns and stuff like that? Well, I'll tell you the honest truth. You don't need an impact gun for a motorcycle at all. There's very few parts on a motorcycle that require an impact gun. Maybe if you're taking out the crank or something like that, or whatever. But even at that, very rarely do you need something that heavy duty. If you do, it's because the person before you was an idiot. It's like every time you take your car to a garage and they change your tires and everybody puts the frickin' nut back on with an impact gun. And then if you have to change your tire on the side of the road, you can't. Why? Because the thing is just freaking on there so tight, you can't break it free. It took me 2 days to get the frickin' wheel nuts off my van there. That was a lot. That was aggravation. Now, mind you, if you torque things properly, you don't have to do that. Torque gun impacts are nice. If you do get one, get a small impact. But I'd use the impact to take things off. But even at that, the impact driver, a lot of times, it doesn't take much to strip stuff. A tap and die kit. There's something that, if you strip out a bolt. Any Healy coil sets. The problem is that some of the stuff gets a little bit expensive, so it's like, if you don't really need it, don't buy it. But if you think it's something you're going to need, buy it ahead of time if you can. Like Healy coils and stuff like that. It's like, okay, well, you never know, I might strip this out. Strip that out. Then, what else can I think of? You can get all kinds of, if you have a chain drive motorcycle, you can get all kinds of products to help you adjust your chain more and align it and do proper chain alignments and stuff like that. You can get all kinds of specialty tools like that. Do you really need them? Maybe yes, maybe no. Fuel injector cleaner kit might make life a little bit easier for you, but it might be kind of expensive. But if it's something you're using every year and it just makes life easy for you, okay, why not? What else? Yeah. Good idea to have yourself some spare wheel weights, just these little weights. So if you change your own tires, or sometimes weights, if your tires go out of balance, a tire changer is also a good thing to have if you have one, if you can get one. You don't have to have one, but if you have low profile tires, it makes life a lot easier to use those than to try to just change a tire on the ground. It's a real pain in the ass to change a tire on the ground. Obviously, you can get the tire changer, stuff like that. It's a good idea to have it. You'll spend a little bit to set one up, but once you have it, you can use it for multiple types of wheels, not just a motorcycle. And not only that, you can also have the advantage of saving the money going to change your tires all the time. You do it yourself, and then of course to balance the wheels is really easy. Greases, as long as you have all the greases for the bearings and stuff like that, and testing the bearings. One thing I haven't done on this bike yet was test the wheel bearings on it. They don't feel dry or anything like that, or anything wrong with the wheel bearings. But it's good to inspect that stuff. I mean, right now I'm in that maintenance interval that I'm pretty sure the Kawasaki Good Time Center, when I bought the bike from them, they won't sell a used bike as is unless they say it's as is. They do a full tune-up on it, so I can imagine they check the head bearings, they check the wheel bearings and all that. But you never know. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. They did do everything else: the oil change, basically the fluid changes on the bike. But when I do that stuff myself, I tend to like to know, when it was done. So zero time. By the end of this season, I'm probably going to pull the bike off the road, say October, November, sometime around that, when it's too miserable to ride, and I'm just going to tear the bike right down, see what I need. I don't take things apart unnecessarily that are like right into the engine and stuff like that. If I don't need to go in there, I don't. It's like, again, because usually when you start cracking those things apart, usually end up having to replace gaskets and stuff like that. So if it's not leaking, ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But anything that's a maintenance tune-up thing, like a clutch adjustment, not a bad idea to do that. Again, those little cable lubrication cable fittings that you can get to help lube up your clutch cable, throttle cables, stuff like that. Yeah, you get those little tools. Again, little tiny little tools like that. They're always so handy. Yeah, I guess that's about it. That's all I got for now. As I do stuff, I'll show you what I pick up, and I've shown some of my toolkits. I don't have much, but I got almost everything I need to work on the bike. But I can't find my feeler gauge anywhere, and I know as soon as I go buy one, I'm going to find it. But that always happens too. A good little toolbox so that you never have to go looking for those specific tools, and those tools being specific to that machine. It really makes life easier. Sometimes you have to double up on some of the tools, but maybe two of the same wrench or whatever. But so far, yeah, like any sort of little fittings or anything like that. If you could have those connectors and stuff like that, if you think you're going to have a bad connector at some point, if you get ahead of that stuff, it makes life a lot easier. But yeah, some of those tools are just staple tools. The multimeter being one for the electrics, so obviously a torque wrench and a impact drivers definitely will save you from stripping out a lot of stuff. It's just good thing to have. All right, so anyway, I'll leave it at that. So yeah, there we go. So hopefully, if you like the video, maybe subscribe and hit the like button and share. And be true to yourself, be true to others. Always do the right thing. Have yourselves a great day.